So I think we're live,
Yeah,
but I
we are
haven't
live.
seen the
Yeah.
stream start yet because there's always that little delay before it actually starts. But I'm going to say hi and just sort of assume that we've started and people can see us.
Hello,
Um,
hello.
hey, there we go.
There,
Cool.
there.
We are live. Okay. Hi, my name is Ben Casey. I work for Ableton. And one of the things I like to do normally in the normal world when we're all not trapped in our houses is travel around and get to visit with user groups and have workshops and meet cool people in different parts of the world and talk about making music and Ableton Live and Push. And I guess we kind of felt like it was getting a little boring all being stuck in our houses, and we thought it would be really fun to be able to get some people together online and do the same sort of stuff we would normally do if we could leave our houses, which is like hang out, listen to some music, talk about Ableton Live and how to make our music production better, and learn some things from each other and get some different people to share some cool ideas and share their work and how they approach producing music. And so we thought we would do this online. So hopefully there's a few of you hanging out on YouTube or Facebook that want to watch this and get in touch and share what you're doing. So we'll be here. And I guess I don't know who's going first. Who's going first?
I think it should be Brian. I think.
I think it should be Brian. There are three absolutely amazing, super talented music producers and Ableton Live teachers hanging out today. We've got Claire Lim, Brian Funk, and Mike Hatsis. And at some point today, all of them are going to show you some really cool, interesting, hopefully super inspiring stuff that they do with their music. And so I guess without further ado, let's make some noise. Brian, take it away.
Oh, why, thank you, Ben.
Oh, really quickly. One thing just to let everybody at home know, this is interactive. Hop on YouTube, chat to us, say hello, let us know what you're thinking, let us know what you're feeling. If you have a question, shout it out. If you have something cool you want to see, shout it out. And take it away. Sorry.
Oh, we should. Sorry, before we even start. Sorry, Brian, I even cut you off again. But we special shout out to Mike, Dierico, not Mike in the chat, in the Zoom, but Mike Dierico,
Yeah,
who
Big Mike.
yeah,
Dierico.
who's tuning in on YouTube. Thanks, Mike, for tuning in.
What's
yeah,
good?
and
What's good?
if anyone else sharing on YouTube wants to share, this link, please feel free to do so. And yeah, Brian, take it away, please.
Okay, what's up? How's it going? I'm in a real place, Mike. Touch my stuff. Ben will do that too later. So what I want to talk about today is taking our sounds in live. Like normally we're really trying to get like high quality recordings, and I want to actually make bad recordings and then sample them and use the character of those samples to make interesting sounds. It's something I've gotten into a lot. I make lots of Ableton Live packs myself, and one thing I love to do is to record to mediums like a MicroCassette, I got right here, which we'll do in a few minutes, and VCR tape, which I got a VCR tape. This is the only VCR tape I have anymore, so I'm recorded over that tape probably 50 times by now. So I'm going to share my screen and see how this goes. And I think you will be able to see me and this, which is kind of my table is less important, I guess, but just so you don't get too bored. I've got a couple different things. I've got an operator set up here, which I just realized we didn't sound test, but are you guys hearing that?
Yeah, it's coming through great. Up. It's great. Yeah.
Cool.
Sounds good.
All right, nice. So I've got an operator patch, and I've also got an 808 kit, and it's just playing through the different drums because I'm going to sample them one by one and kind of rebuild this 808 drum kit. The operator patch is really simple. It's almost the default, except I added just a little bit of oscillator B, changed the fine tuning slightly, and put a little bit of spread on here. So it sounds a little more Rhodesy. I'm going to lower live a little bit. It's a little loud in my headphones compared to what I'm hearing. So let me know if the balance is okay. I'm going to start with the MicroCassette. I've got it right here. And I'm going to turn on my speakers in my studio. I'm not going to do anything fancy. I'm just going to put this right up to my speakers and record the sound of this operator. I've got a clip that is all set up to just send me a C. So I'm gonna start my micro cassette and put it right up to my speakers and hit play. And I even kind of shook it around a little bit just to give a little extra kind of craziness in there. And I'm going to plug this into my audio interface. And I've got a track set up right here called MicroCassette, which should be hearing my MicroCassette. I'm just going to record it. I'm going to rewind it first. Something I forget that you have to do. My MicroCassette, put it right up to my speakers and hit play. All right. I actually shook it a little bit too while I was playing it because these things are so sensitive that any kind of movement just plays around with the pitch of the tape. And we got our sample right here. So now I'm going to go to our good old friend sampler, drop this on a track right here. Maybe I'll just put it right next to MicroCassette and put this onto the zone area. And we will just move the start of the sample right up to there. I'm going to even turn off snap just so I can get it real close. Little side note, some of this noise in the beginning could actually be fun for maybe another instrument, just percussive stuff, all the clicks and crackles that the tape itself makes, the little machine when you press the buttons. We'll loop this sample and give it some crossfade. And let's hear what it sounds like. There we go. So now we can maybe play around with the sound a little bit, give it a longer release. We got kind of like a little bit of distortion in the beginning, which is kind of fun. And I'll compare this to what we started with. If I just move over here. And then we got this as a result. I've got a filter too that I can play around with. You know, you got all the normal stuff that you have inside Sampler to play with. Probably have some fun adding some effects to it, maybe like a chorus. Mute my speakers there. But now we got this like interesting lo-fi, funny sounding synth. And some of the like shaking you can hear every once in a while when I literally shook the tape recorder itself. Gives it almost like a vibrato. So we've got a sound with quite a bit of character right there. I'm going to take the same sound. Yeah, well, what the heck? We'll do the same exact sound just for comparison purposes. And I'm going to record it now to the VCR tape. And let me see. So in order to do this, I've got the external audio effect right here. This is this effect right here, right inside Ableton. Defaults, normal built-in plugin or device. And with that, we can tell Live to send the signal from my audio interface, which it's going out output 7 and 8. And that 7 and 8 goes into my VCR. And then the input is 23, 24. So as I play this now, we're actually hearing the VCR monitoring this signal. And if I turn this off, you might hear there's a little volume difference. So this sound is being run through the electronics of the VCR and back out. And to be honest with you, sometimes that's actually enough to add a little bit of character. Just running through some wires and some old electronics and coming back out can color the sound a little bit. But we're not just going to do that. We're going to record it to the tape too, because the tape is where a lot of the fun happens. And especially, pump up the volume, I think has a special charm to it that adds something a little magical to the sound. So I just hit the record button on my VCR. Kind of have to like listen to it to tell if it's going, and I think it is. So now I can just play this clip again. That should be recording to the VCR tape. Let it play. Cool. Hit stop. Hit rewind again. I'm going to move this a little bit because I can't see you guys. There you are. Okay, now we can go inside this track, which is, I actually have it set up to listen to the operator track because it's really just monitoring the VCR. So I'm really receiving the VCR from this external audio effect and listening to the operator track after the effect, which will give me the sound of the VCR. And you can see there's a little bit of level there. That's just the hiss of the VCR. I will hit record and then I'll hit play on my VCR. Let's see what we get. There we go. There's always that moment of wondering if you actually recorded it and did it right. There's not a lot of visual feedback on the VCR. So we can stop everything and basically do the same thing. Maybe this time for the heck of it, I'll just use simpler, drop the VCR sample on there, and just fine tune our sample points and turn on the loop and maybe just give ourselves a little fade again. And let's see what this sounds like. I got a long release on there, so I'm gonna just turn that down. And we can just compare that to the original operator. We'll record on that. Cleaner sounding. So on this track, especially if I turn it up a little bit, you can really hear the hiss of the VCR. Maybe if I even like bring this back a little bit, just so we're playing it early. There's that noise underneath everything right there. Bring this down. And there you can even hear the tape hiss there, the old VCR sound. So we just made two instruments, basically the same exact sound, but by recording to these different mediums, we got one that's like this, and it's a little noisy, and then this one's a lot noisy. We lose some of the low end on this too. But that could be nice just to fit in a track to give it a little extra warmth and character. How are we doing on time? I have that 808 kit. Should I go ahead and do that, or?
Yeah, please go for it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see what happens with the 808. Again, I will use the microcassette. And okay, I'm looking to set something up on the track, but that's kind of the beauty of this. It's so simple. Like I don't even have to route anything. And I'm just gonna hit record again, and then play this. I'm gonna turn on my speakers. Turn them up a little bit too, and I think I may have missed that first hit. There we go. We have to rewind this and plug it back in. And now we'll go to our microcassette track, record, enable it. and play that back. Okay. So we got a bunch of stuff here. I think what I'll just do is kind of slice the MIDI to make this quicker. I mean, you can go in depth and go nuts with this. I've got one I like to use. I think this is it, the drum control. Let's see what happens. What do we get here? Okay, I didn't like my preset. Oh well. This is looping here. So here's really where our samples are. So we got these really, really lo-fi drum sounds, kind of low in volume. I didn't get the right, could have probably picked a better, you know, slicing algorithm, but we got something anyway, just so we can get the sense of what this is going to sound like. We could sequence a beat if we wanted to. That's our kick. It's a little weak. See if I can find the hi-hat in here.
Brian, a quick question. Is
Yeah.
your audio output by any chance still coming out of your speakers?
No.
Oh, okay, cool. Because it's a little tiny little bit soft. I'm wondering if you could maybe.
it's very soft. I think that's probably the recording.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
also this here. So what I'll do is set that to 0. And then if I right click, I can copy that value to siblings. And that will bring all of these up.
Yay.
A
Thank
little
you.
bit better?
Yeah, that
Cool.
sounds great. Thanks.
Thanks. So, you know, maybe you want to do an intro to your song. You might have like something like really lo-fi like this, or maybe a breakdown or something. Just another fun thing to do with sound design. I could, of course, take this again through the VCR tape and, you know, get a similar result, a little more hi-fi than this microcassette, but the process is really the same to send it right in there and record it in. And I think what I'm trying to get at and stress is like have fun with old equipment and stuff that's maybe dated or doesn't sound good or is even broken. Sometimes I have stuff that I try to use and it doesn't work well, and it's very, I guess the impulse is to get frustrated and annoyed and try to fix it, but sometimes instead of killing my whole groove and inspiration to make music, I just decide to go with it and accept what's wrong with it as if it was what I intended to do. And that helps me stay in the creative mindset and keep moving forward without giving up and, you know, throwing your hands in the air, pulling your hair out and things like that, to embrace these imperfections. And that's kind of what this is all about right here. I see we're getting close to 9, which makes me feel like it's probably time to wrap this up, right?
No, it's all good. If you wanted to, you could keep going also. But we did have a couple of comments in the chat, Brian, and they were saying how this was really unique and how they really enjoyed the sound. So yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I mean, like, you know, we could get more technical with this and there's a mic input on it, but I love that I can just take this and put it right up to the speaker and record it and just let it be whatever it is. And that could be like, earlier before we started this, we were talking about just using cell phone mics even. Like the mic on your phone is simple enough to use where you can put that right up to your speakers and you record something on it. And then if you're slick about it, you can upload that directly to Dropbox, for instance, and then have your Dropbox folder inside your places in Live. And then all of your little ideas are right here. And that's actually something I do quite a lot of. I've recorded little samples and then they pop up in my Dropbox folder the next time I show up to make music. And it's not this big process of like converting files and sending things. It's just there. And there's a lot of these I haven't gotten around to. I thought this rattling door frame was cool at some point.
Is that someone speaking in the background too?
There's someone speaking in the background. I'm not even really sure. But just to, since I've got a minute here, where's my audio track? Is this it? So if I were to take that sound and put that inside sampler and make an instrument out of it with that person talking, again, I have no idea how this is going to turn out. So there we go. There's a perfect example. It's the voice is in there. You just get like something interesting about your sound. Like I don't even know who that is talking, to be honest with you. So there's this random person that was there while I was doing this. And this is funny because I'm not around little kids that often. I should know who that is, but I can't identify that voice. But there's this thing about this recording now that only I have. It's only mine. And just like these other ones too, like anyone could program this operator patch. That's not it. All I did literally was like turn this knob up, turn that to 10 and move the spread. That was all I did. So it's not hard for someone to get that sound. But when we go into wherever our instruments were, which I think our microcassette version, like now this is much harder to achieve. And even the VCR one too still has quite a lot of character. Like there's a fuzz to it. And that to me makes that sound very special. Takes this sound just to that next level. So yeah, I encourage you all for doing this. I see there's a question from Mike. He says, when you're working with so much analog vintage gear, do you typically keep your setup fixed or do you change it up quite a bit? That's the thing about analog stuff as it breaks, right? I mean, I had 2 of these in my house. I used to use these all the time. This was how I recorded everything a long time ago. Neither one of them worked. So I wound up going to Salvation Armies and thrift stores. And for whatever reason, this was actually kind of tough to find. So I wound up on eBay for that. The VCR was a similar story. My old VCR that I had lying around in an attic didn't work anymore. And I didn't have any tapes. But luckily, the thrift stores had plenty of them. So, like one of my synths over here is it's a Moog Realistic. It's like called the Concert Mate MG1 Moog Realistic. It was a kind of like it wasn't like a professional Moog. It was like a Radio Shack brand that was like kind of consumer level, which is great that they made that, but it's over the years it didn't age so well, and there's a lot of things wrong with it. They have like a foam inside that deteriorates over time, and it makes all your sliders gritty and make a lot of noise. I could get it fixed, I guess, but as I was saying before, I've kind of embraced the way it's broken, because when the filter's on a slider, not a knob, when I move that filter, it'll filter out the sound, but every once in a while the full signal just pops right back in and then pops right back out. And if you're kind of like moving it around enough, you get these like scratchy, interesting mistakes that happen. That to me is like the instrument itself sort of collaborating with me in its brokenness. it's just changing your mind about it. I'm just embracing it instead of getting frustrated and unscrewing the thing and taking it apart. I'm just like, all right, cool. That's just how this synth is. If it was perfect, then why would I even want to use analog? Because there's perfect digital representations of that stuff. But that's kind of why you use analog too, is sort of because it breaks. I haven't really gotten too much gear in a while, mostly because I find that the gear is sometimes a distraction. Sometimes it's a lot easier to make music when you have a lot less things to make music with. So I'm trying to be be a good boy and not just keep falling into all the marketing and all the exciting new stuff that comes out, because there is so much. But one of the ways I deal with that gear lust is things like this process in here. I've taken a really simple operator patch and made it into a pretty cool, unique sound that I really couldn't buy that sound even. So if you're creative with maybe sampling or the way you use the gear you already have, you can actually extend its life quite a bit. You don't really need to go out and buy new things all the time.
Yay, that's awesome. Thanks so much, Brian. That actually kind of reminds, this is tangential also, but like it reminds me of that 100-year-old piano pack that you have. That's probably one of my favorites that you've made.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that piano is awesome, and it's very imperfect. In fact, where it is right now is sort of in the middle of getting fixed at one point. So some of the keys don't even work. There's no hammer because I need to kind of replace those. But by sampling it, I can fix it a little bit. I tuned it a little bit for that pack. Not too much, but just, so that it's playable. But again, like there are perfect pianos already in your computer. You've already got that, but you don't have the old broken one from 100 years ago.
Totally. We actually did have one more question from Mike also. Maybe it's not directly related to your presentation, but I think you might be able to answer it. Do you have a preference for any kind of streaming software that you're using? Because I know you have been streaming a lot, like for the January stuff as well. And Mike's question specifically was about Streamlabs versus OBS, or if there's any other alternative setup that you use, maybe you could share with us just quickly.
I'm trying to figure that out right now. I used OBS. I streamed throughout January, which was every day making a little jam. And I was using OBS. And then I guess, I don't know, a month or two ago, I found Streamlabs OBS, which is interestingly named exactly the same. But I feel like the Streamlabs version is a little bit easier on the eyes. It's like the user interface is kind of nice. And there's a few things that sort of happen a little more automatically than on OBS. I don't really know which one I like better, though, to be honest. Because a lot of those settings, I really don't know what half of them mean. I'm trying them out and seeing how the stream comes out and then just changing things and hoping for the best. I'm sure you have a lot to say about that, Claire, because I feel like you're popping up live every time I go on the internet.
To be honest, Brian, I feel like we're all kind of in the same boat. I feel like, and honestly, probably a good number of people watching this are also in the same situation, but we've all tried like to, find our way through this entire like COVID pandemic by just getting to use a lot of streaming stuff. Oh, we did have a comment from someone in the chat using Twitch, and Twitch is a little bit different from what we're talking about here because Twitch in a way is a platform. So it's like Twitch, YouTube, Facebook. These are social media platforms-ish kinds of things, but we're specifically talking about software that lets you bridge to that. So for example, when I stream to Twitch, I am still using either OBS or Streamlabs, and I've been trying to play around with both too, Brian. Like you said, like one is just a nicer looking, one's like a Mac version and the other is maybe Windows XP from 2000 or something, but
yeah.
But yeah, I feel like we're all just kind of figuring our way out when it comes to that. So
and you know what I think about this whole thing, which makes that okay, is and maybe this is just me, but I feel like the streaming it's not that new, but it's new to a lot of people right now. And I think there's an extra level of like forgiveness when people are watching your live stream. They understand like unexpected things happen. That's why you watch live things. That's why we like concerts, is because something can go wrong, or, you know, there's something interesting can happen, let's put it that way. And I think if you're hesitating because you're not sure which to use, I would say just go for it and embrace the fact that it's live, and part of live is like the risk and the unexpected. So
You're gonna start having a lo-fi streaming movement.
yeah. I think we are, whether we like it or not, right?
Yeah, that's true. I had a question for you. I wasn't sure if any of you had gotten a chance to check out the Stray Cats collection of Max for Live devices that Max for Cats put out.
Yeah.
It's free. This is exactly what I was going to ask about. There's a device hiding in there, but I feel like it's like slipped so under the radar. It's called Color, and it's this amazing lo-fi device. Like, it really, I've never heard, like, over the years I've like lusted after these things, like the like lo-fi loop junkie. Oh, we've got it right here, perfect. Like, nothing gets my set from like 0 to Boards of Canada quickly like this thing does. It's such a great device. Anyway, I was just curious if you'd gotten to try it and what you thought.
I love it. This is another way to get to some of the things that I've done sort of the hard way by recording to other mediums. Color it's a vinyl emulator. It's kind of like a tape emulator too, I think. It's just like takes the fun bad stuff about those mediums and just puts it right inside this Max for Live device. And there is a vinyl, which is kind of cool. So I'm playing this operator patch right now that was totally clean before. There's this nice wobble control. We can change the tone on the vinyl. What's cool about Color is you can control all these things. The stuff I was getting from my VCR and my microcassette recorder, I just get whatever I get based on whatever mood that gear is in that particular day. But this is something you can control. You can really make yourself seasick and change the flutter and phasing.
Man, the vintage vibe preset on this is beautiful.
I don't think I've seen the presets.
Oh, they're so good.
I don't know. I don't know if I have them in my collection. I had Color already, so maybe if when you download it as the pack.
Yeah, it's part of the pack. It's
Okay,
part of
so
the Stray
maybe I
Cats
missed
collection pack.
Maybe I missed those presets then, because I've had this one for a little while now, and it's one I like to use quite a lot.
Very cool.
Yeah, good point on that. This is a great device, and it's free. Can't beat that.
Just in case you wanted to try these techniques out and you like can't go on eBay and buy an old dictaphone in the middle of all this and you're stuck at your house, you can try it today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good point. It's a great device, and it's no risk, all reward. All right, gang. That about does it for my presentation, I think.
Cool, awesome. Thanks so much, Brian. Yay!
Thank you. That's fun.
And please give Brian some virtual claps in the chat, everybody, if you're watching on YouTube. I just saw the numbers pop up a bit, so I think we have some new people coming in. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Philly User Group. The Philly Ableton User Group is online for now because we're all in quarantine. So that's why we're all kind of here. But yeah, Ben, did you want to say anything about Philly user groups in general?
Oh, I mean, just if you're enjoying this and you feel like you have cool stuff to share with everybody else, get in touch and let us know, and let's get more people sharing the stuff they do and the cool tricks they have.
Totally. And just to clarify, Ben, where should they actually who should they actually contact?
Just shout out in the chat. Just shout out in the chat. We'll find you.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. If anyone would like to say something in the chat, because I do know that we do have a couple of people in Philly who are actually in the chat. So if anyone has any thoughts that they want to share or things that they want to share with the rest of us, we would much appreciate that. Thanks.
Sounds good. Who's up next?
Cool. Mike, do you want to go next?
Mike's mic is off.
There we go.
Hey.
Hey. How's everyone doing?
Awesome.
All right. Yeah,
Coming
Brian,
to you,
thank you. Yeah, Brian,
coming to
thank
you
you, man.
live from the tropical dolphin basement. I
So
love
we
it.
got
I
it.
love it.
So we got it. So yeah, Brian, man, thank you so much for that. That was awesome. And yeah, and then also that other device is really cool as well. I just downloaded it, and I'm gonna test that out as I am VCR-less right now, but hopefully that will change. All right, so my name is Michael Hatzis. Make music as Banginclude, and yeah, I just we're here sort of in Philly, virtually in Philly, and just want to kind of talk a little bit about subtractive synthesis. All right, just kind of like basic stuff, that sort of thing. Um, but again, subtractive synthesis is kind of the foundation of all other synthesis types. So if you get a good idea and understanding of subtractive synthesis, then you should be able to kind of, easily get more towards like anything else, like wavetables and any other thing with filters and LFOs and stuff like that. All right. I know some crazy words. We'll talk about those. So let me share up my screen. Let's see what I got here. All right. Let me just see if it's up. All right. All right, cool. So I have a I made a little keynote thing here.
Wow.
First time. Never did it before.
Yeah, professional.
A little bit, sort of. You'll see that everything's kind of
Whoa.
angled weird, but and one downside of Zoom is that, well, we'll just keep going into it. I got to do it in this mode because I'm going to be jumping back and forth with live and stuff like that. All right, so just wanted to kind of start off with just like a little quote. I love quotes, and this one I like especially. It's attributed to Anonymous. I stopped understanding math when the alphabet decided to get involved. All right. And basically, the idea is, once it gets a little bit complex and you start adding all this stuff in, you kind of lose interest. And I've been teaching for a while, and, I'll be teaching in a class, and then all of a sudden you'll say a couple like complex terms, and then, you start to lose everyone. So what I'm trying to do here, and one nice thing about analog stuff is that it's more on the simple side, right, compared to other synth types. And it's just a lot easier. It's just on the simple side. It's very simple, no headaches, that sort of thing. All right. Also, with subtractive synthesis and just synthesis in general, right? Just creating sounds from scratch, that sort of thing. It all kind of builds off each other, right? So here's another nice quote by the one and only Leonardo da Vinci. Study the science of art, study the art of science, develop your sense, learn how to see and realize that everything connects to everything else. All right. And, music and synths and sampling, everything kind of connects to each other. Right. So, hopefully you'll get something out of this, whether it's over your head or way beneath you, that sort of thing, and just see how we could kind of connect this to other types of music. Last, I have another quote, has nothing to do with what I'm about to do, but I was going through my quotes. I saw it. I liked it a lot. I figured I'd share it with you. Who else besides Brian Eno would say something like this? Music has narrowed down into being not which is audible, but that which is recordable. All right. Might have fit Brian's presentation a little better, but, anyway. So, yeah. So, basically, the idea is that, right, we just want to talk about subtractive synthesis, okay? And, just showing you off a couple different synths. But let's kind of jump over to this one, all right? And the idea with subtractive synthesis is that we start with a rich, full sound, which I will play for you, all right? Things like sawtooth waves, things like square waves. All right, we start off with these big, full sounds, and then we want to remove stuff from it. All right, so let me just set up my Zoom device. Apologies. All right, cool. And, oh, hang on a sec. I'm sorry. I forgot to share audio.
Ooh.
Sorry about that. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, no problem. It's all good.
I
Take your time, Mike.
I forgot to turn on audio. 1 second. Apologies, people.
All good. While Mike is setting up his stuff, just thanks so much again for tuning in, everybody. We really appreciate it. Yeah! Yeah!
And there was bass.
Yeah!
All right, cool. So again, what I was talking about here is that is my God, man. All right, there we go. All right, cool. So like I was saying, what we want to do with the subtractive thing is we want to start off with like rich, full sounds. Right? Something like this is a sawtooth wave, right? Super buzzy, okay? So that's an example of a very rich, full kind of sound, all right? Like, you know, we would say it's got lots of frequencies, takes up a lot of, you know, what we can hear, all right? An example of something that's not very full. Oh. Right, is a sine wave, right? Similar to kind of like what Brian was playing before. All right, so again, we have sawtooth wave, very buzzy, very full. We have the sine wave, right, very gentle. And then we have one in between, which is our pulse or rectangle wave, which we could make into a square. I've set it up as a square. Kind of has like a tubular sound, pretty rich, but not as rich as the sawtooth. All right.
Mike, we had a quick question. Someone was asking in the chat, could you explain why you would want to subtract from a rich, full sound?
Sure. I will answer that with a video. All right.
Ooh,
so
thank you.
yeah. So the basic idea is that there's everything in between those two, right? So we have something like the sine wave, and then we have the next one we have is a square. All right. And there's so many different areas in between those, okay, that we might want to use. All right. And then also we could kind of shape our sound as well with different things that we use to subtract. All right. We use these things called filters. And like I said, I'm just going to bring up a video. And the basic idea is that, you know, what we want to do is we want to subtract. Now, it's very similar to how you have someone who sculpts wood, right? Like a wood sculptor or anything like that, or, you know, someone who sculpts granite or stone. And the basic idea is they start off with this big chunk of wood, and then they kind of like whittle it down, you know, use different tools and turn it into something that most of us think is a little bit more beautiful, right? So for instance, can y'all see my screen? Like it's not Ableton, it's a YouTube video, right? All right.
Yeah,
cool.
it looks good.
All right, awesome. Just making sure.
Totally.
So again, look, so we're starting off with like a big piece of wood, right? So this is our big sawtooth buzzy sound, okay? And in the end, we're going to use the sculptor uses these different tools and turns it into something different, right? Something a little bit more, you know, what we had in or what he or she had in mind, okay? And that's why we want to subtract, okay? That's kind of like one of the only tools we have in subtractive synthesis, all right, is to start off with this big thing, take away, again, just like something like this, right? All right, so you got this big piece of wood right here, and you can see, got to set it up, got to initialize the patch, right? And then you go in there with your little knives and chisels, that sort of thing, right? We would use things like filters, LFOs, envelopes, all right? And those are our tools to kind of remove things and chisel out the sound we have in our head or just experiment. All right, I'll just skip forward because I know people get a little bit, just kind of get to the good stuff. All right, so again, that's the idea. In the end, you know, they created this beautiful sculpture, right? And that's kind of how we work with analog synths or anything with a filter, all right? So just kind of moving forward, right? I have this basic, I can even switch it to a sawtooth, all right? Buzzy one, all right? And what I can do is I can create something like the classic all right, so the basic idea is that starts off with a square wave. I'm sorry, a sawtooth wave, and there's a little bit more to it. But, you know, again, what we could do is we could kind of use that to, or use the filters, envelopes, those tools I was mentioning to kind of subtract and kind of arrive at that sound. All right. I'd rather start off with something a little bit more simple. Okay. And then we could kind of move over to there if you'd like. All right. So kind of something very simple is the infamous Kill Bill siren. All right. Which, again, is pretty simple to make with a, well, basically any kind of synth, but all you really need is an analog style synth. All right. So here's the sound. All right. And again, you know, I'm listening to it. And for me, you know, a big part of it is listening. Okay. Kind of like get your listening skills up and just kind of train your ears to hear things that, you know, just normal people that aren't into music and production and stuff like that don't really hear. Okay. So I'm just going to drag in an analog. Okay. And, you know, again, I got all this crazy stuff going on here, right? All these different knobs, buttons, so on and so forth. And I'm just going to play a few notes. I actually have the MIDI for this sound right here. Right. And again, we're kind of already there, right? We're kind of close. Okay. I could always switch it over to a sine wave. It's not really rich enough, you know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't really have all that extra buzz that we would like in a sound. Okay. So I'm going to load up the sawtooth, and just, again, with the listening thing, sawtooths, anytime you hear like brass, like horns, sirens, things like that, generally it's a sawtooth wave. All right. Now, it's kind of simple to tell the difference, or it's not very simple to tell the difference between a sawtooth wave and a square wave. So we're not going to really concentrate on that too much. We'll just think, like I said earlier, we have the sine wave, which is the gentle one, and then we have the really buzzy one, and then everything in between. Okay. So, but anyway, like I said, sawtooth waves, anytime you hear something that sounds like fake brass, or, you know, a siren, or like EDM, like that kind of stuff, generally they're using like sawtooth waves. All right. So this patch is pretty simple. Okay. You just load up your sawtooth wave, and we just have this one little function here. It's called glide or portamento. Okay. And basically what this does is, instead of, hear how it's like very choppy from one note to the next, right? It's like, and then if we listen to this one, it's nice and smooth, right? So basically what that is that's called portamento or glide. And what that does is allow the one note to kind of gently move to the next one, right? Glide to the next. So instead of jumping in pitch, right, you're kind of sliding up to that pitch. All right, so if I just turn this on, all right, one more thing I have to do is I got to set this thing to be mono. All right, because I only want one note playing at a time. And there's just this really cool thing that happens when you set your synth to mono, right? So that means you can only play one note at a time. All right, I was just trying to play a bunch of notes. Didn't work. All right, so there's just this kind of, you know, just these cool things that happen when you set it to mono and you set it to glide, right? And so let's try it now. All right, we're getting there. Not bad, not bad. All right, so we have one more control that we can mess around with, and that's basically the glide time, right? So you can kind of change how long the notes take to go from one to the next, or that glide, or that, you know, continuousness. Right? So something like that sounds good, okay, or it's close enough. All right, and just not going to get too deep into it, but just to kind of talk about that filter thing I was telling you about. All right, so again, we have these things called filters. All right, and again, those help us subtract, right? And again, the idea is like thinking about, we have the very simple waveform, like the sine wave, which sounds like, you know, similar to a piano, or like a piano, like guitar string, you know, again, very gentle, something like that. And then we have the full buzzy one. So again, the filter kind of allows us to customize that and kind of land somewhere in between. All right, so you have it right here, and all right, I'm just going to kind of slowly take it down. Y'all could hear. Right, you could kind of hear it getting darker. Right, and what I'm going to do, I'm not going to go too crazy with this. I'm just going to kind of take away the top end, right? The part that like really kind of hurts the ears. You know what I'm saying? I'm just going to kind of gently take that away, right? So I'll just use the filter to remove that stuff or subtract that stuff. All right, so that's just my basic tool on that one. That's my little like whittle, or whatever you want to call it. All right, and I got my glide time on. I got some distortion set up, right? Let me lower this quite a bit. Right, distortion is always fun. Add a little reverb, and we're good to go. All right, so, you know, again, very basic sound, but, you know, hopefully that helps you out in kind of like understanding the little bit of subtractive synthesis right here. All right, so any questions on that at this point? If not, I'll just keep it going. All right, cool. So yeah, I wanted to look at what do I got here. What would make sense? All right, cool. So yeah, let's check out something else. All right, we have people here that are Stranger Things fans.
Yeah.
Not that I could see. But, all right, awesome.
Well, I'll let you know in the chat if anyone's a Stranger Things fan. I am myself.
That'd be awesome if you could, if you're looking at it, because I'm just looking. All right, cool. So yeah, I think I saw the first season. It was really cool, but I kind of just fell in love with the music. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not a big like 80s head, but I definitely love me some like, you know, like synth porn kind of stuff. All right, and that's basically like the theme song to Stranger Things. All right, it's all like analog synths, and you just kind of listen to it. And me just sitting there listening to it, I'm like, oh, that's this sound. Oh, that's that. That's it. So really fun. One of my classes, we for analog, actually, one of the topics is like kind of like recreate the song. I give them all the notes and everything like that, and then they have to kind of put it back together. All right. So
we have some season 1 and 2 fans in the chat. So
gotta check it out. I gotta check it out.
out.
Yeah, I gotta check it out. Like I said, I'm slacking. All right. So yeah, so let's jump in. And again, let me get rid of this. I thought I got rid of all that stuff. All right, so we got to start from scratch. Hope you don't mind that I'm cheating with the effects just to kind of keep things moving. All righty, right. So yeah, we're basically just going to take what we learned in our previous exercise and just build off of that. All right, so let's take a listen. I got it right here for those people who've never heard. And I gotta fire up the scene to get the right tempo. I think it's like 80. Alrighty, right. So yeah, just if you haven't checked it out and you're into, you know, music production and stuff like that, you know, definitely check that out. There was some articles on it. I don't exactly remember where they were. Should have done that. Apologies. Just kind of like talking with the people who created the soundtrack and yeah, so on and so forth. All right, so let's just kind of I just threw in the let me back up a little bit actually. I'll just play this. All right, mouse. All right, so that's like maybe you could kind of hear it's kind of like that main melody, the arpeggiated, you know, the bum 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 bum. All right, so that's the idea. That's kind of what we're trying to recreate, that bum 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 bum. All right, so yeah, let's keep it going with the sawtooth. Why not? All right, and yeah, so we're gonna check out another really cool bit. Maybe it's an effect or it's a feature of analog synth, subtractive synths, and that's called unison. That's kind of what we're gonna do here. We're also gonna check out the filters, that sort of thing. All right. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna kind of like play it. Wrong one. Sounded good, right? All right, so again, same setup, right? And I'm just taking that filter down, get rid of the high stuff. All right, not bad, not bad. Like I said, pretty close right off the gate, all right? And with this one, we have this thing called unison, okay? And basically unison is kind of like, I found some awesome pictures, I'm just telling y'all. So if you were to think of unison, all right, that is what it would look like, okay? So notice that, first of all, another classic movie right here, Robin Hood Men in Tights. All right, but the basic ideas with unison is I'm gonna press one note and it's gonna play multiple notes, okay? So just kind of like, you know, generally if you're going for like bow and arrow practice, right? Shoot one arrow at a time. This is some unison bow and arrow, all right? So he's one bow, a lot of arrows, all right? So that's kind of how it works with analog, all right, or unison. It's basically you're just pressing one note, all right? So here's one note. Let me actually open up the filter all the way. Oh. All right, and if I turn on unison, what that's going to do is right here it tells me that every time I hit a note, it's going to play two notes, okay? Which, you know, it's kind of cool in itself, but you know, what do you do with that? Well, I can also play four notes, all right? And you know, different synths out there, you can make 16, 64, whatever. 4 is good enough for me at this point. And so now if I hit play, it's kind of got like this weird chorusy effect, but kind of the magic happens when we start hitting the detune. All right. So what's happening here, right? Basically what's happening is, again, we are one bow, right? So one note that we're pressing, four sounds, okay? And basically what we did with the detune knob is we're just kind of like detuning them, so kind of spreading them out, all right? So just kind of like if he was to, you know, just launch these bunch of arrows, they kind of like spread out, all right? So here the way we're spreading them is with different pitches, okay? So not really like if you look at a keyboard or a piano, right? You have, you know, a C, then a C sharp, D, D sharp. We're kind of going in between those notes, all right? So it's not a whole semitone, all right, or half step, whatever you want to call it. Like, I don't know anything about music, so I call it a semitone. But anyway, so it's kind of just like a little bit, a tiny little bit, just enough, you know. So there's just the one note. All right. So again, that's the unison sound. And again, this is used everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. It doesn't matter what genre. you know, you have things from like trance to, you know, even like techno house. Okay. And then even future bass, those big, like, you know, like LFO or those bouncy, like organy bass lines. That's all unison. All right. So again, it just gives it that big chorusy sound, right? Like think of the idea where it's like one person singing versus like a whole choir. All right. So again, let's see how we're doing here. All right, you know. All right. So that's the basic idea. That's all. That's the whole thing. All right. You know, from here we could do very interesting things. Okay, like if you look here, you have these OSC thingies. All right, and those are just the things that generate the sound. Right? Remember we talked about it before. We have the saw, the sine, the rectangle. All right, so we can actually use two of them. And right, I could just go here and I could play this an octave above. Right, so more notes. So now I'm, you know, playing one note. Right, and then it's playing another note above that, and then it's multiplying it by 4. All right, little confusing. That really doesn't matter. What kind of matters is what it sounds like. I could lower it, make it very thick. All right, and I could even just change it to. And again, you know, there's other ways you could kind of horse around with the filters. That sort of. All right. Very cool. Time for one more, or?
Yeah, we actually did have a question come in.
Oh, beautiful.
And I think, yeah, this will be cool for you, Mike, because we were actually just talking, everyone, before we went live with this video, we were actually talking about vocals and recording. And someone had a question. Could unison be applied to vocals? Maybe there's some kind of equivalent.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, one way you could do it is you could toss it in a simpler, right? Simpler has sort of a unison control, right? It's like width or something like that. But generally, yeah, there's some different effects. I would say, you know, Ableton's chorus. The easiest way to do it is really just to, like, you know, just duplicate the tracks, right? So, like, for instance, let me find some vocals. All right, easiest way to do it, and this kind of like nails home what the idea of unison is. All right, so hopefully I don't have anything offensive in here. No.
Damn, this shit. Oh.
Let's go down a little bit.
Boom. Back and forth.
All right, I'm just gonna use this.
Back.
All right, I'm just gonna loop that part because I know it's safe. But yeah. All right, so I'm just bringing that in there, and cool. So like I said, the basic idea is even just with, you know, without effects, right? I just have
back and forth.
It's a little slow. Let me speed this one up a little bit. Right.
Back.
Cool. So, and that's really what's happening. We're just doing it back. All right. So if I go to the old clip.
Back.
Let me just solo both of these. Right. If I just go to the clip, right, I could, you know, transpose the whole thing up. Right. So I could do like octaves.
Back and forth. Back and forth. Back.
Right. You do some really cool stuff with Complex Pro. Maybe we can get into that next time. All right. So anyway, I don't want to go up. I don't want to go up semitones or half steps. I want to go up just a little bit, like cents. All right.
Back and forth.
All right. Then with this one, maybe I'll go down a little bit just to kind of center it out.
Back and forth.
And let's do another one. And we'll do one more while we're here. All right. Just to get it, you know, to sound kind of cool. All right. But so, yeah, there's definitely different effects, you know, that you could just do this without making all these tracks. but you know, this is one way to do it. If you're really into vocals, I would say check out this product called Nectar. Really cool for vocals, and they have a harmonizer built in where you could actually just do this really easily. All right, very cool stuff. I'm trying to think, like, otherwise in Ableton, I know there was like a live pack. It was like pitch and time machines. Check that out. Yeah, maybe someone could put that in the description, the pitch and time machines.
Yeah, totally. Will do.
Because yeah, that you should check that out.
Back and forth.
Right, so you can kind of hear, again, it's got that like chorusy effect. All right, again, it's all kind of like I'm doing this manual, but you know, that's what we got here. Let's see. I'm just gonna type something in because my mouse is not very happy. So anyway, you could, does this sort of make sense? Right, just kind of go in there, clip view, and just detune things slightly. So basically I have one that's like -10 and then one that's +10, right? And the reason I want to do that is just so it's kind of like centered around that neutral pitch, all right? And then again, I have the same thing here, -35, +35. Again, so it's kind of centered around that neutral pitch. And this is basically what analog is doing.
Back and forth. Back and forth. Back.
All right. All right, so that's kind of that. And, you know, you could do that with anything that you find there, all right? All right, so hopefully that helped out. But again, that's just basic Ableton stuff. As I mentioned, you can also check out, you should really check it out. It's a pretty cool pack. It's the pitch and time machines, all right? And there's a lot of like harmonizer stuff in there that's built in. And there's also some, you know, you could sing and trigger like synths and stuff like that with it. It's got like audio to MIDI trigger. Pretty cool stuff, especially if you're doing live performance. All right, so let's see. We did the Stranger Things. I'm trying to think like what else we could do here that's kind of, all right, let's we kind of slept a little bit on the sine wave. I don't think we gave the sine wave a fair shake. All right, so let's just jump back to that. And well, you know what? Let's do something with a little bit more that we're actually going in there and subtracting stuff. All right. So this one might be a little bit much. All right, but you know, this is kind of like the master class episode or lesson on this. All right. So again, like we have the this one right here. All right. Yeah, this just, I didn't even want to like let the drums play because I'll just start, you know. So yeah, this is a classic. Herbie Hancock. And yeah. So Herbie was using a ARP Odyssey for this. So there's a couple things in there that it's going to sound a little bit different. All right. And, you know, apologies for that. But one thing I want to do is just, we'll do this one. Bear with me, and then you'll just see how many sounds just kind of come out of this, right? Once you figure out the filter, it's just like, that's it. You know what I'm saying? There's just, you know, tons of different sounds of like all different genres. You know, like I said, like tech, you know, any kind of house, like bass house, all that, you know, all the newer stuff. All right, anyway, so I got the notes, and I'm just going to kind of go here, toss this in. All right. And we're going to kind of use a new tool. All right. It's kind of like again, we had the chisels. This is like a very fancy chisel that we're going to check out, and it's called an envelope. All right. I'm just going to kind of go through it. All right. And, you know, again, like I said, if it's too much, just, you know, again, I don't know where everyone's at in the production thing. So yeah, so an envelope, I have these, I'm going to go back to my beautiful presentation. And yeah, filters. All right, so yeah, so basically we're going to have like a Mad Libs style definition of an envelope. All right, I don't know if anyone remembers Mad Libs, might show my age. I remember when we were in grade school. Yeah. we were in grade school. These were my favorite, right? We used to have this book club, and like every month we get like a new Mad Libs, and we'd be like in there filling it out. The basic idea is, you know, they just have these stories, and you kind of fill in the blanks. All right. So we got a story here. It's called a envelope. All right, and you know, we'll try to fill in the blanks with this one. So basically, an envelope is something that changes something over time. Okay, and if you want the fancy jargon, it's basically a control signal that changes something over time. All right, and we don't really hear the envelope directly. We just hear its effects. All right, just kind of like we don't really see the chisel. We just kind of see its effects. All right, so we have a few different stages. All right, the envelope that's like trendy nowadays is called ADSR, attack, decay, sustain, and release. And yeah, so we could find the envelope on this here synth, just there synth, and yeah, here we go. Let's go up a little bit. All right, so basically right now we're dealing with volume envelope, okay? And we're gonna jump over to the filter envelope later, but once you understand one, it should just all kind of make sense. All right, so we have, here is our envelope, right? So again, we have the attack, we have the decay, the sustain, and the release. All right, so going back to this. So basically this says the time attack is the time it takes to go from the minimum blank to the maximum blank, okay? And like I said, we're talking about volume, all right? So we're just gonna fill this in with volume. So attack is the time it takes to go from minimum volume to the maximum volume, all right? So let's go here, and I'm just gonna make the attack longer, all right? So that would mean it's gonna take a lot longer for it to go to the minimum to the maximum. All right, and you can hear the sound kind of rises up. All right, here's would be a fast attack. Right, the sound just kind of goes right in. I hit a note, bam, right, all guns blazing. All right, so let's go back. All right, we'll check out, we have a release thing. That's the next stage. All right, that's called release. Well, it's not the next one, but it's the next logical one to talk about. All right, so release is basically when you let go of a key, how long it takes to go back to the minimum or to fade all the way out, since we're talking about volume. So it's telling me 8.42 seconds. All right, so that's kind of like a medium long release. All right, so let's go back and see what we say here. And yeah, so release, when you let go of a key or notes, the time it takes for the blank to go back to minimum value. In this case, it's going to be volume. All right. All right, cool. So like I said, we can have a long release, short release. Okay, so something that has a very long, well, something that has a longer release is, think of like a piano where you have the hold pedal, right? And it just takes a while. Like, again, you know, you can remember from Brian's awesome presentation when he had that piano and he just hit it and it just kind of like drifted out, nice, lush. So that's kind of like a longer sustained sound. So things like pads, strings, things like organ has like a super fast release, right? As soon as you let go, right, it stops. Something like maybe woodwinds as well, brass, right? When you stop blowing into the thing, it just automatically stops, right? So those have fast releases, all right? Next up, we have sustain, all right? Sustain's a little bit weird. It's not really weird, but a little bit more difficult. Basically, sustain is like when you're holding the key down, how loud it's going to, well, the value of the blank, the value of the volume when you're holding a key down, all right? So here, it's pretty straightforward. And here's my sustain, right? You can kind of see it. It's got like a nice graphic here, right? You can see the volume shoots right up, okay? And then it kind of like fades right out when you let go. And here we have our sustain, all right? All right, you can kind of hear. You see it kind of falling down. There's my sustain point. You can see it resting right there. I let go, and then we have the release. All right, so that's kind of the sustain. All Again, sustained sounds is something like an organ, right? As long as you're holding a note down, it's going to keep playing. Again, something like brass, woodwinds, as long as you're got your circular breathing going, doing that, you're going to, you know, it's going to keep sustaining. It's going to keep playing. All right. You can hear it fall down. That's the sustain. Last one is the decay. All right. Decay is like where it falls down, right? Where it gets very loud. That's the end of the attack. All right. And then you have the sustain where it just kind of rests. That place where it kind of falls down, that's your decay. Right. So like right here. Right, you see how it just falls down? That's our decay. All right. All right, cool. So hopefully that's a little bit straightforward. I know it's kind of, you know, a little technical, but either way. Yeah, so like I said, what we want to do is we want to make this chameleon sound, right? This one. All right. And what we're actually going to do here is we need to actually use a filter envelope, all right, which I didn't really talk about yet. All I told you was that, you know, we use the volume, right? We put the volume in the blank. So yeah, we got to figure out this filter thing now. All right. So, you know, any envelope, what it's going to do is, right, I have this filter here. Right. We could hear it removing stuff. All right. Now, the beauty about this is, like I said, we're subtracting. Okay. And again, someone asked in the beginning, well, why is that cool? Well, because we could kind of change the way we're subtracting with the envelopes, or like when we're subtracting with the envelopes. And that really kind of like puts the whole thing together. Okay. And again, even if you're not into like analog sounds, you know, any synth with filters and envelopes, LFOs, you could do the same thing. All right. All right. So I have the filter all the way down. Okay. And again, right, when we hear a lot of buzz, a little bit of buzz, okay? So what the filter envelope does, that's this thing right here, is it just kind of tells us when it's going to be buzzy or when it's going to subtract the buzz, okay? And technically, the volume envelope, this thing that we just talked about, is changing this knob over time. Okay, remember I said it changes something over time? So this one changes that. Okay, and then again, you know, it just changes. You can have a very short note, right? No sustain. You can have a long note, a lot of sustain, a lot of release. All right. Again, let's just jump over to the filter envelope. All right. And yeah, we want to just kind of keep our volume envelope, right? We want, when a volume envelope is set up like this, right, which is just a gated note, right? Again, it's just going to keep playing. There's always sound there. That's kind of like that initial piece of wood that you sculpt something at, right? So there's just like a block of wood. All right. So again, now we're going to use the chisels, stuff like that, filters to kind of like pull out of this thing. So yeah. So I'm just gonna right. So again, what I want to do is change this knob over time. I'm gonna use this thing. Okay. So the one thing we have is this right here. This is your envelope amount, right? So that's just basically how much this is going to be affected. All right. Right. So you hear as this goes up. Right, as this goes up, it's affected a little bit more. Okay. So right now, the envelope is kind of changing the filter. All right. And let's just check this out. All right. So I'm going to pull the decay up a little bit. All right. And just kind of like take a minute and listen. All right. And try to kind of describe to yourself what you're hearing. All right. So like, again, what we want to talk about is like, when is there buzz and when is there no buzz? Okay, and like, how do you get there? All right, so. Right, and probably be easier if I just had like a long note going here. So give me 1 second. Sorry about that. All right, so I'm just gonna make the note longer so it's a little bit easier to. Nope. Right, so again, if you kind of like think about what you're hearing, it starts off very buzzy, okay, and then the filter over time cuts away some of that buzz, okay, right? So very buzzy at the beginning, a little more dull, not buzzy. Right, so again, what we have here is we're using the decay, and the decay is kind of determining when this knob is going to close down, right? So right, so we listen to this, right? You can kind of hear a similar thing going on. The timbre is kind of off, all right? But I was like, yeah, see, without the filter, kind of easy to hear it like that. I could shorten the decay. All right. All right, and that's getting there. What I want to do now is just I want to kind of like thicken it up because it's a little bit, right? It's not really bassy, and that's kind of the important thing. So I'm going to call on our good friend, oscillator number 2. And I'm just going to put this down an octave, right? So again, that thing where you press one note. Right, I'm just going to tweak the decay a little bit. Turn on my effects. All right, and that's pretty much it. All right, that's the whole thing. Again, you know, once you start to get the hang of the envelopes, right, everything is just like right at your fingertips. Okay. Any questions on this one?
Yeah, we have one last question, I think, Mike, and it is, when you do this kind of subtraction, are you also thinking about prepping for the mix to some degree, or really just shaping the sound itself?
Well, that's a great question. And just like everything, it really depends. Yeah, so I would say on a broader scale, just trying to think of the best way to answer.
It's a loaded question. There's a lot
it's
of
kind
things.
of, yeah, I think, you know what, the best answer is, I would say yes, and that I kind of do it subconsciously, all right? Because when I think even before I get set up, I'm looking for a specific sound, and, you know, I'm not going to lie, like, I know I'm showing you how to use synths and stuff like that. I use presets all the time, and I just tweak them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know the synths really well, so I could just, oh, this is kind of cool, but
Totally.
you know,
Yeah.
but I want to do, so, you know, I want to change a little something. So I kind of know what I'm going for a lot of the time, and then in that case, yeah, I'll kind of like prep it for mixing maybe, or I'll say that I wouldn't use a sound if it kind of like would screw up a mix. You know what I'm saying? Like, really depends. But again, I think, you know, for me, here's another answer. Maybe this is a little bit easier. I'm just trying to be honest, you know what I'm saying? So I think what I would do is I would, you know, if it wasn't what I was looking for, I would just save it for something else or just try to repurpose it. But I don't really try too much to mix while I'm kind of like sound designing, if that makes any sense. I kind of just do more, you know, creative. Mixing is definitely creative, but you know, it depends like how you feel about mixing. Me, I'm kind of like, I'd rather not mix because I think it's just a waste of time. I'd rather like start new ideas, but you know, again, that's me. So yeah, when I'm kind of creating stuff, I try not to mix. You know what I'm saying? Like I'll mess with it, like with EQs and compressors, but that's a different thing than mixing. Mixing is more when you just kind of like sitting back, like looking at how everything kind of fits together. So I would say not really, if that helps. Like I'm more just kind of, you know, tweak it a little bit. You know, sometimes you want to just cut something out, or you want to just like hit something a little bit, or you want to like just compress the crap out of something or something like that, or, you know, just kind of experiment with compressors, like sound design with compressors, that sort of thing. Distortion, another one. Hopefully that didn't confuse you any more than you already were, or didn't end up with more questions.
No, that was awesome. I feel like
yeah,
there's something so
I mean, we have other people here. I mean, you know, maybe.
I was gonna say, I feel like I have this like soft rule, this idea that like with subtractive stuff, you can always cut more later.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
If you leave a little too much in the sound and then you get into the mix and you're like, oh, this is too big and too thick, you can totally chop more of it out. You can filter more out or EQ more out. You can't necessarily always go the other way. If you're working in the box like this, you probably could go back into the instrument itself and open the filter up and put a little more in.
Yeah.
But if you are like freezing stuff and flattening stuff or working with external synths, like once you take it out, it's gone. It's gone. It's gone. So
it's a print it. Print it.
Which is a great way to keep moving forward and get songs finished. You know, like commit and move on.
That's how you do it, man. Just record it, delete the patch. Now we're moving, man. You know what I'm saying? Oh yeah. Again, you got some cool perspectives. Let me just one last thing. I just want to kind of, again, I think most of the sounds I did were kind of like old school. But analog synths can be used for like newer stuff. Like I said, you know, you have tons of things now. Like, you know, you have like, you know, basic techno. Analog synths have always gone hand in hand with techno, obviously since the beginning. And that's kind of like what made techno. There's more to it, but I think the introduction of the different analog synths and things like that really kind of, you know, turned house into techno. Again, there's like cultural things and stuff like that I don't want to ignore, but you know, sound wise, you know, a lot of it was that kind of like synth sound and things like that. So again, techno, it's kind of like a staple. Electro house, I don't know if that's still cool. Bass house, you know, that's a lot more digital stuff, like, you know, wavetables and things. But again, the idea is you could do all this stuff with something like Serum, Ableton's wavetable. You know, future bass, you know, all those big sawtooths, all those big organs and things like that are just kind of like super saws, and, you know, just with like really nice notes. I had one here. I don't know if I deleted the sound. Oh, no. So things like this, like, again, you could make this with analog. Maybe you could save this for another. So again, that's just a square wave, you know what I'm saying? And then, you know, there's this fancy MIDI shaper, which is kind of, this comes with the Ableton suite, this shaper, okay? And basically, again, it's just a different kind of chisel tool, very fancy though, all right? You could kind of draw in how you want it to change. This one's a little bit tweaked. I kind of went inside there with Max for Live and kind of like made it a little fancy. But again, that's all right, we got our unison. All right, so again, you know, the idea is that this stuff just kind of comes everywhere, just like that quote. You know, there's connections everywhere. Yeah, so something's happening with my computer. All right, cool. Yeah, last thing, just real quick, you know, even something like this, all right, is very similar to the previous Herbie Hancock patch we made. And all right, so I'm talking about the bass. did I delete this one? Yeah. So again, I could just drag over this here chameleon sound. And the only difference with this one is, all right, so that's just the one we just made. Okay, let me see where we are. Let's try. All right, so again, it's just basically the same exact patch, okay, that we just made, the Herbie Hancock one. But again, we just turn on the unison. A little distortion. We need a little bit more time, but again, that's so anyway, that, you know, again, close enough. The one thing with analog is that the envelopes are not very fast, so you can't really get that nice, like, plucky edge to it. But again, you could kind of hear just, right, just the difference that the unison makes. All right, again, the unison is the thing that makes it sound wider than it should be. All right.
Awesome.
Yeah, so hopefully, you know, you learned something there or found some of this interesting. Hey, Ben, what is the Ableton synth learning site? There's like Ableton.
It's literally learningsynths.ableton.com.
There you go. Y'all should check, you know, if you're into this stuff, definitely check that out. It's a great
You got your
resource.
browser up there. Type it in so they can see it.
I'm sorry, one more time. What was it? Learning?
learningsynths.ableton.com.
Beautiful. Bam. So again, check that out if you'd like to learn more about synths and stuff like that. And again, analog is just a great way to kind of like, you know, just mosey on into the world of synthesis, because again, it's a little bit more straightforward, less options, and you know, you could make a ton of different sounds out of this thing. And again, it just, you know, it's all portable over to other synth types. Like if you want to step up to Ableton's wavetable or even something like Serum or Massive, you know, all this information is portable over to that, because it's all the same thing, right? It's just like once you learn how to drive a car, you know, you could drive any car. You just got to figure out where everything is. Like, oh, where do I put the key? Where's the, you know, shift? That sort of thing. Anyway, that'll do it. If anyone's got any questions, let me know. And if not, I hope that was helpful. And yeah, stay good, Philly.
Yeah, thanks so much, Frank. That's awesome. Cool. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Just to catch everybody up, because I know we just had a little bit of a jump in numbers. So welcome everybody to the Philadelphia User Group for the Ableton User Group series. We are not in person this time, but we're here through Zoom. But the hope is that after this pandemic is over, we will have the opportunity to be in person with people. But in the meantime, that's why we're presenting online. And we also want to thank everyone for tuning in on YouTube, which is where most people are watching right now. So thanks for tuning in with us, and we hope you've been having a good time. We are currently a little bit running a little late, but I'm going to make things short. Hi, I'm dolltr. I'm Claire. I also go by Claire. Oh, Ben, did you want to add something?
No, I was going to say, you got it. Go for it.
Go for it. Please go for it.
I was just going to say that was awesome. And next up is Claire.
Cool. Well, hi. Yeah. Hopefully for anyone who's tuning in, I do know that a couple of people who follow me on YouTube are also tuning in as well. So thanks so much everyone for being here and for watching. I'm going to kind of wrap up today's presentation. We had some really great presentations from Michael and Brian, who are also fellow Ableton Certified Trainers and are presenting, or they were presenting, on really great topics. And also, just as a quick reminder, this video is replayable. So if you want to check those out, you can also scroll back and then you can join us and catch up with whatever we're seeing now. But I just thought I'd finish off today by maybe kind of going into a little bit of a section that perhaps is a little bit less known to maybe some of our friends who are not using Live Suite. So just to put everyone on the same page, whenever we're talking about Ableton Live, we're talking about, yes, specifically a music software, but we are also talking about different versions of Live. So in general, there are 3 versions of Live. There's Intro, Standard, and Suite. But if you do have Live Suite, which is the fullest version of Live in a way, you'll have access to something that is called Max for Live. And I'm going to show you exactly what that is right now. Moving over some screens, going to share it live with all of you. And yeah, now you should be able to see live. You can see that it's in purple, which maybe some people have also told me that they don't know that you can actually do this, but you can change the color of live if you so desire. It usually comes as gray, which is a nice color as well, but if you want to, you can make it purple, blue. Lots of my kids that I teach make theirs red. I think it makes them happy. Not sure why. But yeah, you can customize the color as well. But if you were to go over into Live's browser, which is all the way on the left-hand side, you notice that we have a couple of things. We have categories. And as we scroll down these categories, sure, we get sounds, we get drums, instruments, audio effects, MIDI effects. Right below MIDI effects, there is a category that's called Max for Live. And underneath Max for Live, you'll notice that we have a couple of subcategories: Max Audio Effect, Max Instrument, and Max MIDI Effect. And all of these 3 categories are pretty much what we've seen in categories themselves, but they're just preceded by the word Max. So I'm not sure if this has perplexed anyone before, but I know for sure that when I just started using Live, I didn't really know what I was doing, of course, because I was just poking around in a way. I could do nothing close to what Michael was just doing in analog. It was just like looking at all of these things and being completely overwhelmed by everything, and so far removed from even doing anything of what Brian was doing of recording so many different kinds of audio. But I was kind of a little bit intrigued by Max in general. I was kind of like, who is Max? Like, who is a person or something? But it's not actually a person's name, even though Max is a name itself. So even though it might be a bit mysterious, Max for Live is actually pretty straightforward. It's probably the most beautiful description of Max for Live that I've personally come across so far is on the Ableton website, if you want to check it out. And I often summarize Max for Live as being just a really great platform for you to extend the functionality of Live if you own Live Suite. So Max for Live comes with Live Suite, which is a version of Live that has, like I said, the greatest functionality. And if you do own Live Standard or Intro, you do have the option of purchasing Max for Live separately. But just for a bit of background, and without nerding out too much, the word Max refers to a program called Max, which is also known as Max MSP Jitter. And it's a really neat program that's been around for decades. It offers you a visual programming environment to do some really neat audio programming, multimedia work. You can also do things like control live visuals or control an external hardware synthesizer or do DMX lighting. We have lighting, not lightning, goodness, lighting. You can do a lot of really great DMX lighting things with Max for Live as well. And when we take a closer look at the Max for Live devices later that I'm going to introduce to all of you, we'll also get a glimpse of the Max interface. So that's also probably going to help us understand a bit about what I mean when I'm saying that it's a visual programming language. But on that note, a lot of people have described Max as being a little bit like audio Lego pieces. So I don't know if I'm the only person who loved Lego as a child. I hope not. But I loved playing with Legos as a child. And it was really natural for me to, when I started using Live, really get into Max for Live because it's pretty much like these Lego pieces that you put together with audio and MIDI instead. So it's a pretty neat thing. And if anyone out there is interested in modular synthesizers, and if you haven't touched Max yet, you probably will love Max quite a lot if you are into modulars. Or you might be able, maybe you won't like it, but you'll understand it a lot better at least. So keeping this in mind, Max, the program itself, integrates with Live in the form of Max for Live. So that's why, hence the name. So because of this, we're able to do some really neat things that help Live Suite evolve in a way and almost become like Live Suite Plus, like Pokemon next level. And because of that, it extends the creative possibilities of Live a lot. And in general, when we notice something pretty interesting about the names of these Max devices also. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a couple of these categories. You'll see that now I have a bunch of Max for Live devices underneath these categories, and they all end with something that's called .amxd. So that's actually also a really good visual indicator of exactly what a Max for Live device is. Usually when you see a device in your library in Ableton Live that ends with .amxd, it means it's a Max for Live device. So to better illustrate the capabilities of Max for Live, here I have this Ableton Live set laid out for all of you. And let's see how this sounds. I've also got my push laid out next to me over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch a scene on push, and we're going to listen to all of these clips playing at the same time. Hopefully. Oh dear, not yet. Let me check some audio outputs. And let's see. It's because I did not share my computer sound, I think. Thanks everyone for bearing with me for a quick second. Let's see. And we're still not hearing it. Let's see what we got over here. Just gonna do a quick test, everybody. Oh, cool. Looks like we got it back. Great. Fantastic. Cool. So I'm just going to lower the volume of the master, which is the overall volume control in Ableton Live. And yeah, I have all of these tracks playing over here in session view in Live. And each of these tracks, each of these sounds that you hear, each of these sounds was made with a Max for Live device. So let's just take a quick overview of these things that we're hearing right now. Over here, I've got a kick that was made with a drum synth for Max for Live, and the same thing also with the hats, I believe. And then I've got a special Max for Live device that's called Palmas that's doing a lot of the claps that we're hearing. So for example, we've got this Max for Live device that's specifically only doing claps, which is pretty neat. We've also got a couple of other devices doing more instrumental melodic kinds of things. So for example, we've got a percussion-y thing over here that's a little bit pitched. We've also got a bass that's made of a Max for Live device too, called Bassline, very appropriately named. We've got some chords with an instrument that's called Poly. Developed by Ableton, the company, and it's really great at integrating with Live, which is the software. So because of that, if you're familiar with my doll trick work, you probably know that I'm a big fan of Push. I mean, people call me Push Lady and stuff like that. It's like, I feel like that's like an appropriate name, so I'm just going to stick with it. That's probably my superhero name if I had one, Push Lady or Controller Girl or something. But yeah, so over here I've got Poly loaded up on Push, and I can play this as a proper instrument. And I'm also going to make that louder so that you can actually hear what I'm doing. Great. And I'm playing scales, doing slides with this over here on Push as well. And this is really cool. I'm able to, essentially use Max to create my own synthesizers. We'll take a little bit of a deeper dive into what exactly these things look like when we're opening them up and taking a look at certain things. But right now I'm wondering if Poly's sounding pretty okay. I'm going to play the clip that I had playing for it again, and maybe we can listen to it. Pretty neat, pretty straightforward, just like a, saw thing. Now, I think it could be nice though if I wish there was some kind of device that could somehow let me add a little bit more of dimension to this. And I'm going to introduce a Max for Live device to you that's called LFO. And this might be familiar to some of you who already know about like LFOs and stuff, like especially how Michael was talking about it in the previous segment that we had. But LFO, if I do turn it on, you can kind of see that this is a Max for Live device. And basically, with the use of LFO, I'm going to be able to control certain patterns of these other Max for Live devices. And maybe now that I've turned this LFO on, you may have noticed that a control I had started moving over here. So in Poly, what I've done is I've made this LFO device map to something that's called LPF. And LPF stands for low pass filter. So again, it's a type of filter that we also did talk about just now when we were talking about subtractive synthesis in Michael's segment. So let's see what Polly sounds like now. I'm gonna press the clip in live. So we start getting a little bit more dimension. Again, here is Polly without the LFO. And here's Polly with the LFO. We can also do some additional things, like to this LFO device itself, which is also a Max for Live device, we can maybe change its depth a little bit. So see what happens when I grab this knob over here that says depth, and I'm going to bring it down. And we can actually see the waveform physically change. And just to put everyone on the same page also, this physical shape that we're seeing is the motion of the LFO. So that kind of gives us a little bit of a heads up as to what the LFO is going to actually do to a low pass filter if I were to map it. And maybe even going back one step further, how I did map this is by clicking on this LFO device over here. When you load up an LFO device or any Max for Live device that comes, it'll usually come up as a default preset, which is the same thing with analog and any other kind of synth you have, simpler, same thing. But when you want to map this particular function to a particular control, so for example, low pass filter in this case, all I have to do is click on map. We'll see this map button start lighting up and flashing, and we can then click on any parameter that we want to control. So let's try something else this time. Maybe let's do resonance. I'm wondering what that might do. And let's play this back. Also offset things a bit. So now you might hear maybe a little bit of a lasery kind of tone in a way, maybe a little similar to the Kill Bill siren that we were hearing just now, but a little bit more squelchy, a little bit more resonant, for lack of a better word. But that's what the parameter is called anyway. Yeah, that's an example of another type of Max for Live device. This time it's not an instrument like Polly was, but it's an audio effect. Let's also take a look at maybe one more, not one more, but maybe a couple more things. So right now we have this audio effect, we have this instrument, and these are generally musical. But one other cool thing that you can do with Max for Live devices that people sometimes forget about is really utilitarian kinds of things. So I'd like to quickly share with you about one Max for Live device that I'm a huge fan of, and anyone who's ever seen me like break down my live performances knows that I'm a huge fan of this. But it's a Max for Live device by another Ableton Certified Trainer in our clan called Elephant. And it's the word elephant without any of the vowels except the first vowel. So there is an E in front. It's like elephant. But he makes really amazing devices and does a lot of really great work with educational stuff also. So highly recommend that you check him out on YouTube. His YouTube channel is actually really, really awesome. And he created this device that's called Notepad. And what this lets you do is it's basically a Max for Live device that lets you type in certain notes. So let's say I wanted to leave a note for myself that's maybe I was working on this session. I could even type in, say, remember to clean up vocals. And then every time I would open this session, I have my notes saved over here. And I can do a couple of other things like change the size of the text, make it bigger if I need to be like reminded a lot of things. And I can even change the size of this window over here. What I could even do is make this notepad a float pad. So it's going to float. And I can then move this around and I can have it, lying anywhere where I want in my Ableton Live set in order to remind me of certain things. But yeah, this also has a paid version of it. You'll notice that this is Notepad Lite, which is the free version that you can get at maxforlive.com, where the Max for Live community uploads and shares a lot of their Max for Live devices that you might be able to make use of. So for example, another really neat device that I've seen has been, say, things that are synthesizers themselves or that help you with composition, like generative instruments, generative Max for Live devices. They could even be super experimental ones that you could use for visuals and working and performing with real-time information and audio processing and all of those wonderful things. So that's another thing that you can use with Max for Live devices. Now, I did mention at the start that we weren't going to nerd out too much, but I think this wouldn't be a proper introduction to Max for Live without actually showing you one of the best parts about Max for Live devices, and that's to edit them and to change them. And I alluded to something else at the beginning of this presentation where I talked about, okay, Max for Live is a little bit modular and you can build devices. And that's exactly what defines a lot of Max for Live devices from other devices that are native to Live, right? So as a last section for this particular part, I'd just like to briefly show you how to create a Max device, maybe. And what I've done over here is I've created my own Max for Live device. And of course, now it looks a little bit strange and maybe we're not exactly sure what this is at the moment. But let's see if we can recreate this device. For now, I'm going to temporarily turn this device off. And I'm also going to close it up by double clicking on its title. And then it's going to snap away. But I do want to create maybe some kind of Max MIDI effect. So I'm going to come over here into my Max for Live category, go into the subcategory that says Max MIDI effect. And let's click and drag it over onto a track over here that I've labeled monitor. And I'm wondering what we're going to be able to do with this. Let's see if we can create some kind of MIDI monitor in Live. Oh, I accidentally dragged it over into a new MIDI track, but that's okay. We can also work with this too. So what we're going to do is that we're going to build some kind of device that is eventually going to look something like this. And what we're going to do is every time we press some kind of MIDI note, we're going to be able to tell what note that is in Live. And that's something that might be a little bit useful, especially if anyone else out there is a controllerist. Maybe you are mapping things a lot. I'm not sure. If there are any controllerists in the chat, let us know and we'll say hi to you and we'll bid you a good day. We have a lot of controllers over in the Ableton Certified Trainers group. So this will probably be something revisiting for a lot of people. But the first thing that we can do in a lot of these Max for Live devices is if you take a look at the title, for example, over here, in the top right-hand corner, there's this little thing over here. I'm not sure what that thing is, but it may look like some kind of plug. So I'm wondering what will happen if we click on this plug over here. Ooh, and something weird is happening. And something just opened up on my computer as well. So I'm going to just take a quick moment to let this show up. And then I'll reshare my screen with all of you. So please bear with me for a moment. Boom, great, awesome. So now I have this little pop-up window that popped up when I clicked on that little plugin device. And basically what this did is it opened up the inside of the Max MIDI effect device that was the default of it. So remember, like I said, whenever you pull up any new device onto a new track in Live, you're pulling up the default preset for that. So that's exactly what we have over here. We have a Max MIDI effect, and we also have instructions. One of them is telling us, build your MIDI effect here. So let's see if we can do this. Now, one thing that you might notice over here in this Max MIDI effect is that if I wanted to, I could move these little blocks around, and these blocks are called objects. So all of these objects, there are tons and tons of objects in Max, the language, and Max, the world of Max itself. But these two objects are really useful because they deal with MIDI in and MIDI out. If we want to create a new object, we can double click anywhere over here to create that object. But another thing that we can do also is to call up some helpful help files. They're very appropriately named. But let's say if I wanted to make some kind of MIDI effect, or MIDI monitor, I do know that one object that can help me a lot in Max to do this is an object that's called MIDI parse. And if you're wondering how I know this information, it is because I actually do use Max a lot. So I'm pretty familiar with it in that sense. But it's really like a language in that sense. And it's the same thing with Live. It's like the more we use these languages, the more we become familiar with the terms, the grammar, the vocabulary. And on that note, it's like you need to build your vocabulary with some of these things too. So very quickly, let's see if we can pull up the help file for this MIDI parse object over here. And if you're wondering what a help file is, we'll see in an exact moment. So what I just did is I held down the option key on my computer keyboard and I just clicked on the object. And after that, this new window popped up. And this was the MIDI parse help file that shows a lot of information. It's an info file that we're able to see, you know, every part of this in. The great thing about this also is that we can copy and paste things from patch to patch. So any little window that you see, everybody, in Max for Live devices or Max programming in general, it's called a patcher window. So we can copy and paste things from patcher to patcher. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this entire section, copy this entire chunk of information. It's not plagiarizing. It's really just like building on other people's work, which I think is the beauty about a lot of the Max community also. But let's see if we can copy out this and paste it into our other patcher that we had just now that had our Max for Live device in it. So I'm going to unlock this patcher. You'll notice that right now when I'm clicking around, I can't actually do anything like I was moving stuff around just now in my other patch. So I'm going to unlock this patch first. And then I'm going to select all of these at once. Ooh, boom. Great. And then the same controls work. I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to press Command C. If you are on a PC, you probably press Control C. But I just copied this, and now I'm going to head back over into my smaller mini patch. So now we're back over here. I'm just going to move some windows around so I can see that. And in the place of MIDI parse, I'm going to also open all of this up, but I'm going to paste whatever I just copied from there. And okay, this looks a little hairy now, but I'm going to move this and make the spacing a little bit better so that everyone can see all that's going on. Great. And now what I want to do is I also want to do a little bit of cleaning up and a little bit of housekeeping. So I'm going to delete this original MIDI parse object now that I have all of this set up. What I also want to do is make sure that I'm patching MIDI from live in to the MIDI parse, which is a specific object that's going to parse out and analyze MIDI. So that's why we want MIDI to be going in. So let's have MIDI going in. And we also want MIDI to be going out. And now what I need to do is make sure that I have saved this patcher. So in order to save our MIDI monitoring patch, we can press Command S or Control S, depending on what we're actually working on. And then you can also save it to anywhere on your computer that you want to. For now, maybe I'll just save it to my desktop. But you can save it into an appropriate folder that you think might be good. I'm going to call this Claire's MIDI Monitor. Great. And I'm going to press save. So now that I've saved Claire's MIDI Monitor, I'm wondering what things will look like if I hit back into live. And I'm also going to lock this patcher as well. So I've locked the patcher, save the patch too. Let's hit back into live. And here is live. Cool. So one thing that you'll notice is that right now it's still kind of grayed out, and that's because I have my other Max Patcher window open. I'm going to close this. And now let's see if we can successfully monitor some MIDI that's coming in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push into user mode right now, and I'm wondering if I'll be able to get some kinds of information into this. Let's also select that track and make sure it's active. It looks like we're getting MIDI on the wrong track. Maybe if I arm it. Yeah, there's our MIDI monitor stuff. Fantastic. So you might notice over here as I'm pressing all these different pads on push, we're actually seeing these come in. And we've got a note on or note off device. If I move a knob on push, we suddenly have this number changing over here, which is control change. And that's usually what we see on knobs. So I have 71, 72, 73, 74, 5, 6, 7, and 8 for all of the 8 knobs on push. And that could be useful if, say, you had maybe a more generic controller like the MPK Mini and stuff like that, and you want to map things and you want to know exactly what you're mapping, especially if you are a controllerist, like I said, or really anyone just learning about MIDI and learning how to map things in the context of performance or production in order to make your workflow more effective. And that's one way that you can build a MIDI monitor. And I think I have the exact same device over here. Yeah, it's the exact same thing, except a little bit more clean in its spacing. But yeah, you can build devices very easily in Max for Live. And now this is going to be in my library. I can keep this forever. I can share it with my students, which I often do. But more often than not, I even just have my students build these things with me because it's so easy and it's so wonderful to be able to express yourself not just through music itself, but even through your own programming capabilities, even if you don't think of yourself as like a computer programmer or anything. So yeah, that's a really basic intro to Max for Live, and maybe I'll check the chat to see if there are any questions about these in the moment. Oh my goodness, so many comments. Wow. Hello everyone, welcome. Thanks for joining in. Yay. Great. Going to see any questions. Yay. Yeah, Kendall loves Notepad too. It's amazing. Yeah, having the comments is key. I think like a lot of us who are educators out there, like we kind of like forget about how useful it is to just have some kind of notepad function. And yeah, Elephant really hit the nail on the head with that one. So it's probably one of my favorites as well. And yeah, thank you, Ben, for answering those questions about Live Suite 10 and Max for Live as well.
No problem. Yeah, if you have Live Suite, you already have Max for Live. You don't have to buy anything else. Max is available as a separate standalone piece of software that you can use outside of Live. So if you want Max not for Live, you can totally go get Max standalone and do all kinds of cool stuff outside of Ableton Live. And having a standalone Max license also right now lets you edit all sorts of multi-channel patches. So if you want to build some really cool, wild multi-channel stuff in or outside of Live, you might want to get a Max standalone license. But if you're just getting started and you already have Live Suite, just get in there and start patching and make some cool stuff. You don't have to go spend any more money yet.
Yeah, totally. I think just to maybe wrap things up, because we could go, honestly, we could go on and on and on about all of these things. But if anyone wants to look at more Max for Live stuff, you can head over to maxforlive.com, like I mentioned earlier, which is the community hub in a way for a lot of Max for Live device creators. And people upload their work there. You can download from creators. You can purchase from creators, which is very important in this time of COVID. Like, please support people who make wonderful music making tools available to you. I know that it would mean a lot to them. It would mean a lot to me if I were on Max for Live. I'm not there yet. I haven't put up my fantastic mini parse device yet. No, that's just kidding. That's really for anybody. But yeah, there's a big world out there of things that you can look into. Things about like visuals, DMX lighting, like I mentioned, even many unique utilitarian types of things like Elephant's Notepad, more stuff like that as well. So yeah, on that note, maybe I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so that we can see all four of us right now. But yeah, thanks so much everyone for tuning in to this particular once in a long time version of the Philly User Group.
It's great to have all of you together. Really quickly, does everybody mind like giving yourself a quick plug for where people can find out more about you or hear your music or get in touch with you and like check out more of the cool stuff you do? Because all of you are awesome.
Brian, do you want to kick us off?
Sure.
No, is everybody embarrassed? Do I have to like read everybody? No.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you all for showing up and hanging out. Lots of cool stuff tonight. I've picked up some tips myself. I'm not a Max programmer, so I'm not going there yet, but you know, some great synthesis tips too. Anyway, I'm Brian Funk, and all my stuff is at brianfunk.com. I do a lot of free downloads of live packs that are very similar to this type of stuff that I made earlier. So that's at brianfunk.com. I just did the 199th free live packs. So yeah,
Whoa.
yeah,
It's a
cool.
big number, man.
Nintendo Light Zapper live pack.
Oh, hell yeah, man.
Sample whatever you can. But yeah, thanks so much, everyone. And thank you guys
Awesome,
for
man.
making an
Ooh,
awesome
Brian,
video of
do you
this.
also have something else that's free if people stay home?
Yes, Claire. It's a live performance course. So it's all about learning to play live. It's really like how I do it. If you remember the setup I had, I kind of use that setup. So it takes you through my techniques, and I think you can apply that. So if you promise to stay home, which I think we're still supposed to be doing, especially here in Philly.
Right outside of Philly.
Yeah,
Just
right outside of
outside.
Philly. So yeah, you can have that course for free, and maybe it'll when we can actually do live music again, we can all get back together and have some fun hearing some new music.
Very, and you could sign up for that from your website.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Very,
brianfunk.com.
that's awesome.
Thanks, Claire.
Yeah.
You should totally put your link in the chat too so people can see it and click it.
Good idea. We'll do that right now.
Michael,
Thanks.
do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Again, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you to everyone for having me, Ableton, Claire, Brian, and yeah. So I'm basically I do music and then I teach. My teaching stuff I don't really have up anywhere, but I would love for y'all to check out my music. It's basically wherever you listen to music, you can find it. Artist name is Banginclude. And again, everywhere. Yeah. So any social, Spotify, I guess Apple Music as well. I don't know. I don't check that out. But yeah, it should be up there. And SoundCloud as well. Tons of stuff on SoundCloud. More of the sampled bits of stuff is going to be up on SoundCloud. Official release is going to be up on Spotify. And yeah, that's about it.
thanks so much again, everyone, for tuning in. Like all of us have said thank you, but like it's really cool to see so many people stream through, leave such awesome comments that have got lots of really great conversations going. So yeah, I'm Claire. I also go by dolltr, so that's my artist project, but I keep it super separate from like my my teaching stuff. So my teaching stuff you'll find under Claire Marie Lim, which is clairemarielim.com, and also, for example, on the Ableton Certified Training website, where you can find all of us actually, because we're all certified trainers, all 4 of us. Amazing. So you can find all of us there. And then for my dolltr stuff, you can find me at dolltr !CK in all lowercase letters, and that's where you can find my stuff on Spotify and on Instagram and on my YouTube channel if you're watching, because that's where you are, so you know where to find me. Amazing. How about you, Ben? I feel like I've seen you in some Ableton videos before. I don't know.
You may have recognized me in such videos as I like to make music and release stuff and put some stuff up on SoundCloud and teach people about Ableton Live and meet people and find out what cool stuff other people are doing and help share it. And that's actually a really good segue into this. If any of you out there have really cool stuff you're doing, ideas you want to share, if you want to help contribute to all this, like get in touch, jump on the Facebook page. There's a Philly Ableton User Group Facebook page. Jump on, say hi. We can totally do these, do another one of these, and maybe you can share some of your cool ideas too. So thank you all. You're amazing.
Big thanks. Big thanks.
We need an applause sample. That's what all of this is missing.
Oh,
There's
man.
not like
Dang it.
applause doesn't sound right through like one microphone. We need
Totally. Or like
and
4.
Mike, there was a surprising lack of air horn in your presentation, but next time.
I did the siren. Next time we do
That's
the
true.
air horn. You know what I'm saying?
That siren was
That's
killing.
true.
That was so good.
Well, thank all of you so much for your time. Thank you for those who checked us out on YouTube and Facebook.